So first, I want to thank you for taking a few moments to look at this video. I'm going to try to look in the camera. I'm actually scripted because if I didn't script what I'm going to say, we'd be here for a while. So I scripted it, so it looks like I'm not really looking at you. I'm trying, but again, I don't want to waver too much from the script. So I appreciate you taking the few minutes to do this. What I want to talk with you about is the assignment. The way that it's graded, why, and have this conversation face to face, even if we're doing it, asynchronously and virtually. So it's critically important when you are given an assignment, any assignment, whether it's at work or academic, that you break it down into components. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. I have my script there, so I can't. So here, this is page 2. The first page were instructions on how to do it, and this is what you're supposed to write. So what I do is I go through an assignment and I highlight the key points that must be included, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but just to give you an idea of what that looked like for me. So when I was grading, I actually went through the assignment and I read it and highlighted it this way and said, okay, so for section A, it absolutely must have, what I've highlighted, what's in the assignment. And so when you review your work, you need to ensure that you've complied with the instructions. And that, so it's not just when you're writing it, but it's also your final draft. And I was told when I started writing papers, if there is anything in the paper that is not specifically related to the assignment, then take it out. And to also make sure that you've answered the question. So if you don't do this, then you didn't do the assignment. You did something else. Also important, your instructor, me, anybody, any of your other professors here, your supervisor at work, we're there to help you and to provide mentoring. We want you to succeed. So if you're not sure what to do, or even if you don't know what the question is, it's our job to help you, and I love doing it. So it's not an imposition, and I did get a few calls from students, which I really appreciated, to talk through the work they were doing. So the reflection paper was assigned with a goal in mind, and you were provided several pages of guide and the instructions, as well as given an outline to format your paper. So some of you did this, some of you did not. Some of you went to more or less than 2 meetings. Some didn't go to self-help meetings. They went to a therapeutic group at an agency. And I wasn't really sure, what to do with that specifically, but other things like that. Some of you provided details about the meetings as requested. You gave the date, the time, the location, the demographic description of the group, the surroundings, the tone, the atmosphere. There was a reason why we asked for this. Some did not do this at all. Some of you presented content of the meeting, even though you were specifically directed not to do this. And that's really important, because when people go to a 12-step meeting, it's not a therapeutic group, so it doesn't have HIPAA. HIPAA is not applicable to a 12-step group that isn't in an agency. I'm not saying it never is, but generally it's not. But the issue is that when people go there and they speak, they have a presumption of confidentiality. And so even if you're a member of the group and you hear something at a meeting, it's a break in anonymity to share that with somebody else that may know that person or even not know that person. That was also one of the issues. So some of you identified 2 concepts in section 3 as you were asked to, and then developed your thoughts on those 2 concepts for 2 to 3 pages. In order to meet the bare minimum standard for the paper, you had to do that. Some of you didn't identify any concepts, and some of you identified more than 2 or 3. And actually that was not a good idea, because what it did was it took away from the time or the space that you had to develop 2. That's what you were given the space for. So, and if you wrote 1 page or half a page or 1.5 pages, then that would have caused me to go back to what I wrote and say, have I really developed this? Because if they're asking for 2 to 3 pages and I've only got 1, then I may be missing something. So some of you did that, some did not. In section D, when it comes to identifying how those concepts are going to inform your clinical practice, some of you discussed and some of you talked about something very general. And again, in order to meet the minimum standard for the assignment, you would have had to take those two concepts presented in section C and then develop them in section D by talking about how it would inform your practice for 2 to 3 pages. That's what we believe is adequate to appropriately think through and develop those ideas. So in order to complete this particular assignment, at a minimum, you had to follow the directions. If you did anything different than what I just presented, then you didn't meet the minimum standard. And that means that they were very hard to grade. So I'm not really sure where that was missed or how that was what you're used to doing as far as writing papers go, but I can't grade something and ignore the structure of the paper and what's presented. I felt really challenged, and I carefully reviewed the context of the assignment, and I decided to provide you with grades. Well, first, comments that are actually integrated to the paper, and also a summary at the end of whether or not you met the standard. And I've included an actual grade on that paper, which I'll email you later today. As you know, I try to provide constructive feedback. I see that as my role, as well as commend you for work that's well done. But you are here to learn, and it's important for me to take the time to go through your work. And again, some of the comments are just, it's information. They're not comments because you should have done something different. So don't assume if you've got lots of comments in your paper that it's because you didn't do it right. It's because I think it's important to share whatever information I've shared with you. So you are graded on the quality of the work that you've done, but again, there's a minimum standard. So when you receive the graded assignment, it will benefit you to review the comments, process, integrate whatever you feel is important into your knowledge base, and talk to me if you want to discuss it, and then let it go. Because like I said, they were good. It's just that some of them weren't the assignment. So I also decided to curve the grades for the gradebook because, again, I think this is a learning experience, and I know the grades are important to you. So what I've done is I've taken the highest grade was an A, not a 100, but an A, and then the next grade was 10 points below that. It was a B minus. So I'm actually using the B minus for the top of the curve, not the A, because I think that was just off the, outside of the fray. And so I'm going to add 15 points to the grade that is in your paper for the grade book. And I also want you to know the gradebook isn't appropriately or may not be appropriately weighted. So those are not your official grades. They're just to give you a guide. So the total column, I would just ignore that because they may not be, this current paper is worth 30% of your grade. However, I'm changing that because I don't think the assignment actually reflects whether or not you've met the learning objectives of the course. And I think that's too much percentage, too much of a proportion of the final grade. So I'm going to probably increase something else, and we'll figure all that out. So, but I don't want you to be overly concerned about that. So take a look at your paper, read it. Don't hesitate to call me, email me, talk to me. And like I said, they were very interesting. I really enjoyed reading them. I just had to grade them based on what was assigned. Okay, so have a great day, and thanks for the time to listen.